What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here to react to Stephon Gilmore being traded to the Carolina Panthers for not a 2022 6th round pick, but a 2023 6th round pick. Stephon Gilmore, the former Defensive Player of the Year back in 2019, the All-Pro cornerback, is now coming home to Carolina. In this video, I will break down the move from both the perspective of the Panthers, who are adding an all-pro corner, one of the best in the game today, and as a Patriots fan myself, I will react in heartbroken mode as my team traded away one of my favorite players. So before I give you my thoughts on Stephon Gilmore to the Carolina Panthers, make sure that you do spike that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. And spike that notification bell for the latest upload. Guys, Stephon Gilmore can still ball. I hope you know that, because there's a lot of people saying that Gilmore might have fallen off last year. Yes, okay, when you look at his numbers in 2020, they may not be at the same level that they were in the Defensive Player of the Year season. Okay, he was Defensive Player of the Year. How many cornerbacks have actually been Defensive Player of the Year? I don't know, 4? So if you were expecting that type of production for Gilmore, I mean, it's just not going to happen. Plus, it was a smaller sample size last year. He was still shutting down wide receivers in 2020 last season. In 2019, I ranked him as my number 1 corner. In 2018, I ranked him as my number 1 corner. Entering this season, I ranked him as my number 3 corner. So he may have slipped just a little bit, but he's still one of the elite shutdown cornerbacks, man-to-man in the NFL. And that is what the Carolina Panthers are getting, and that's what I expect them to get this season when he arrives week 7, I believe, to play the New York Giants, guys. Patriots fans, hold on a second, because I gotta tell these Panthers fans the type of player that they're getting in Stephon Gilmore. So, back before the 2017 NFL season, the Patriots signed Stephon Gilmore to replace Malcolm Butler as their number 1 cornerback. Not only was that a great signing and an upgrade over Malcolm Butler, it was an absolute home run signing that offseason, because from there on out, Stephon Gilmore became the best corner in football. And from 2017 until now, if you judged up the accolades and if you judged up the number of best seasons in the league at the corner position, Stephon Gilmore would be at the top, above Jalen Ramsey, above Richard Sherman, above Tre'Davious White, whoever you put at the top of the list. Stephon Gilmore has been the best corner since 2017 in football, period. PFF has graded him as the number 1 corner in football from 2018 until today. And of course, the All-Pros speak for themselves. The Super Bowl championship, where he sealed the game with the game-winning interception. Iconic Patriot moment. Another iconic Patriot moment where he bats the ball away from D.D. Westbrook in the AFC Championship game on a 4th and 14 to seal that game to move on to face the Eagles in the Super Bowl. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won 1. He was arguably the MVP of one of them, for sure. And then he goes on to be the best player on the team in 2019 and the best defensive player in the NFL in 2019 on the best defense in the NFL. This is the type of player that at his peak can change a defense and can change the way that a defense calls plays, the way that they cover, and the way that they really take on opposing offenses. When you have a Stephon Gilmore, you have a chess piece who can shut down an opposing number 1 receiver. And I want to tell you this. He was doing that last year. Don't get it twisted. He did that versus DeAndre Hopkins when they played the Cardinals. He shut him down. He shut down Keenan Allen when they played the Chargers. He shut him down. Yes, was there a Sunday Night Football deep catch to DK Metcalf? That happened, okay? He wasn't perfect, but no cornerback is. And what I want to bring up with Gilmore is, when you play man-to-man coverage, the way that Gilmore was tasked to play man-to-man coverage versus the best wide receivers in football each and every week. Following them, no help over the top. Stephon Gilmore regularly was taking on the best receivers in the NFL by himself. This is like a Darrelle Revis type of thing, okay? This isn't like Richard Sherman playing one quadrant, one zone. This is playing man-to-man. Follow this guy everywhere. If he's on the left, he's over there. If he's on the right, he's over there. If he's in the nickel, you follow him there too. So that's what Gilmore was doing, guys. You have to understand this. So that's even more difficult to do at the cornerback position, to follow those guys and to shut them down in that fashion and in that form. That is what Gilmore was at his peak. Is he still that guy? I'm not sure. We haven't seen him in a bit. But I will say that if history is any indication, you're probably still getting a very good cornerback. Because as a Patriots fan, I've seen many corners leave this team and still perform at a very high level. Really, Belichick gets the best out of them. They move on and they still perform at a high level. It's almost like Belichick has this way of upgrading a corner to elite status and then passing him on to the next coach for the next contract. But you look at Ty Law. Ty Law, the season after he was in New England, he led the NFL in interceptions with the Jets. And he went on to still be a good player with the Jets and the Chiefs thereon later in his career. Then you look at Asante Samuel. He was an all-pro player in 07, 06. He goes on to leave to the Eagles. He has 3 or 4 great years with the Eagles, leads the league in interceptions, all that sort of stuff. So Asante Samuel, another all-pro, another, Hall of Fame, arguably talent. Ty Law certainly already in the Hall of Fame. And Stephon Gilmore is that type of guy as well. There's a lesser degree with Malcolm Butler, Logan Ryan. Those type of guys aren't in the class of Stephon Gilmore. But for the most part, you see corners leave this team, and they're still very, very good on other teams in other systems. So if you're worried about that because of the Patriot pedigree, I wouldn't be worried about that. Gilmore is an extremely smart player, and he is the most technically sound cornerback I have perhaps ever seen outside of maybe Darrelle Revis. When you talk to this guy, and when he talks about the game, and when he talks about defending opposing receivers, it's like unlike any other guy. If you haven't checked out the film room with him on NFL Network, I highly recommend it. The way that he looks to defend receivers, the way that he studies film, you will fall in love with the player Stephon Gilmore once you watch that, because you'll recognize how smart he is to quickly capitalize on a formation, a split, how to properly use leverage to cover receivers, how to properly press people at the line of scrimmage, whether to press or whether not to press. And that type of freedom was given to Gilmore in New England to basically say to Bill, this week I got this guy. This week I got that guy. I'm going to shut him down. I'm going to take him out of the game. Now we'll see what the Panthers do with him. That's going to be interesting. How do they utilize him in their scheme? The Panthers have perhaps the most unique defensive scheme in the NFL. Nobody else has replicated it yet. Nobody else utilizes it in the NFL today. It's very much a college type of defense. So how do they utilize Gilmore within it? Does he play typical zone on the outside? Does he play man-to-man on the outside? Or do they use him as a chess piece? Maybe over here, Gilmore's one-on-one with this guy, and then everyone else is doing zone. Maybe they use him as a Jalen Ramsey, like the Rams use Jalen Ramsey, where he's tasked to do one individual thing, maybe take away one individual player. For the Rams this season, it's been a little bit different, where they utilize him as like a nickel kind of star, they call it, player. I don't think that's Gilmore's best skill set. He's better utilized on the outside, on the perimeter. But this is a guy that can change a defense and that you can build a defense around. And I've really appreciated what the Panthers have done with their defense, with upgrading their coverage unit. Because in the NFL today, in my personal opinion, you need 2 things to win. You need to be able to pass the ball, and you need to be able to defend the pass. That's my opinion. Nothing else matters nearly as much as those 2 things. And the Panthers are able to pass the ball with DJ Moore and company, and they're able to defend the pass now. They add Stephon Gilmore to a depth chart that, guys, is already absolutely loaded. You look at this depth chart, and as a person who loves cornerbacks, I love it. So you got J.C. Horn long-term there. Now, I don't think he's going to be playing this year very much at all. I'm not sure on the injury status for him. But Stephon Gilmore can take his spot as the number 1 corner this year. And then next year, Horn can basically be put in as the number 2, number 1, whatever, one of the outside perimeter cornerbacks for the team. But this year, you got Gilmore, you got Jackson probably on the outside. You got CJ Henderson, who you traded for, who I think has a lot of talent. Like, I was very high on him coming out of the draft, and I think he can be a superstar if given the right coaching. And I think Stephon Gilmore will be somebody that could also get the best out of him, the best out of Jackson, the best out of Horn. All of these guys are young. AJ Bouye is also there, who's been a great corner in his own right throughout his career, who can add a layer of depth. I think you also have a couple other veterans in the building as well. But you have plenty of depth to cover basically any receiving core now in the league, and it will give you flexibility to play man, to play zone. Gilmore is a great zone corner. That is a misconception. A lot of people think he's just a man-to-man corner. Now, that is because New England typically plays mostly man-to-man, especially when Gilmore was there, because he is a Darrelle Revis type of player. Like, that's literally the only other player I could probably compare him to in terms of play style. And Gilmore also was a pretty good zone player, especially in his Defensive Player of the Year season, where he just became so good at recognizing route concepts that he would almost jump certain routes and plays where he could see it before it happened. You know, there's a great example when they played the Cowboys. I was at that game, and there's a great example of him nearly picking off Dak Prescott coming from, I think, a corner route at the top, coming back down to the flat to almost pick off a pass. That is the type of player, and I think it was in the cover 2 of some sort, but that is the type of player you're getting with Gilmore. He's not only great with his technique in man, but he's also very smart with his route recognition in zone. So you can tell I love this player. He's an all-time great. He's one of the best corners I've ever seen at his peak. And I don't know if you're getting that type of Hall of Fame player, but you're getting a very good player. And we'll see what he looks like coming off the injury. He's obviously going to be motivated. He's playing for a contract. And it was for basically nothing. You know, with Gilmore, you're not going to have an off the field issue. He's as quiet as they come, but he's kind of a silent killer out there. He is Gilly Lock, as they call him in New England. And I thank Gilmore for the years in New England helping us win Super Bowls, because without him, I don't think they would have won that 2018 Super Bowl. He was a key part of it. The 2019 defense, which was the best in the league, the 2017 season, getting to the Super Bowl. So Gilmore, thanks. As a Patriots fan, Panthers fans, you'll love him. Obviously, you might be familiar with him from his college days, but yeah, this is a guy that I still think has 2 to 3 years left of being a premier corner in football, and I think he'll prove that in Carolina in a similar way that Ty Law and Asante Samuel did leaving the Patriots. Now, as a Patriots fan, I'm a bit frustrated with it, and Patriots fans, tune in now if you like. I'm frustrated with the decision-making process and the way this was handled from Bill Belichick's perspective. So this situation really reminds me of Richard Seymour back in 2009, because that's the only real caliber player that you can compare this to, in my opinion. So they traded Richard Seymour before the season even began in 2009. They got a first-round pick from the Raiders for him, and it ended up being a pretty good trade. But overall, it was about value for Richard Seymour, because from there on out, I think he went to 2 or 3 more Pro Bowls. So a first-round pick was a good trade for both sides, to be quite honest with you. It just so happened that the Raiders weren't a very good team. But this is the same type of player at a similar age and similar importance to your defense. And I feel like Gilmore getting a 6th-round pick, not this year, but next year, is absolutely disgusting and disgraceful to me. Like, I love this player. I thought that if he was in the lineup for New England, they would have the best defense and it wouldn't even be close. Like, J.C. Jackson on one side, Stephon Gilmore on the other, Jonathan Jones in the nickel, Devin McCourty at safety, Matt Judon off the edge, Dante Hightower at linebacker. You bring in Jamie Collins, I mean, forget it. It's like ridiculous, especially against the pass. So to let go of that asset this year, there had to be something wrong. There had to be miscommunication on the front of the contract. Maybe Gilmore wasn't willing to play at his current price. Maybe they weren't able to work out a reconstruction. Not maybe, definitely they weren't able to. And it feels like Gilmore, the whole time, he stared down Belichick and he won. Like, I think if you were to trade him, the best time to trade him was last year at the deadline. You were 2-5. You weren't going anywhere. You likely knew you weren't going anywhere. And Gilmore got hurt at that time. You would have been able to probably get a second first-round pick at that time. to a contender, a team that needed a corner, a team that was looking for a Super Bowl, you could have gotten a lot for Gilmore at that time. You could have even probably got more this offseason for Stephon Gilmore. I know teams like the Saints were interested in him. So it makes little to no sense to wait this long unless you really truly believe that you could have gotten a contract done and you weren't able to. There were a lot of different stories, a lot of different rumors. We may never know what exactly happened inside the building. But I will say, backing this up with Panthers fans, man, this guy has been in the building. I think he's mostly been healthy. That's speculation. I don't 100% know, but I think he is healthy. My theory here is that I think Gilmore's been healthy the entire time from that quad injury, and he was just not willing to play it at the current price the Patriots were paying him until week 7, which would have been equivalent to half a season. So now he's going to a different team, and it sounds like he might be playing under that contract for the rest of the year, but with the promise that he will get an extension in Carolina. He wanted to play close to home. Good for him. He gets what he wants. One of the only teams I think he wanted to go to. I think probably the Packers were another that I heard. But, man, it sucks as a Patriots fan, man. And I know there's a lot of questions about J.C. Jackson's future. I think I would be absolutely shocked if J.C. Jackson is not extended. If he is not extended, I will be utterly disgusted because J.C. Jackson is an elite corner. You have to pay this guy. In the defense that the Patriots currently run, you have to pay cornerbacks. You have to. You have to have 2 at least. Right now, their corners are still good. I mean, even Jalen Mills is playing very well, and I know they like Sean Wade, but Jonathan Jones is a stud, and I think J.C. Jackson is a stud as well. I think he's arguably top 5 corner right now. You got to pay that guy. He's still young. This is his first contract. You got to pay him. So I will be disgusted if they don't pay J.C. Jackson because that is so essential to what they need. Obviously, he's healthy. He's younger. He takes priority over Gilmore. I get that. I'm just frustrated with what they got for such a great player who is so important to your team. And obviously, he had all the leverage. He had all of the demand here, and Belichick had none of it. So it's extremely, extremely frustrating, man. I just feel like they kept pushing it to the side, They never dealt with it. I just don't really understand either why you weren't willing to pay him. Like, that is another frustration with me. I would have way rather, if I was the general manager, I would have way rather paid Gilmore for the next 2 to 3 years than sign Nelson Aguilar, than sign Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith. Like, I get those players could help your offense, but what have they done thus far? You know Gilmore is an all-pro caliber player. You know, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, but you know what he's like in your system. You know what he means to your team. You know the person he is. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. So it's frustrating. You know, if there wasn't this Jamie Collins comeback signing, I would probably be even more mad. Hopefully they use the cap space to get a receiver because I still think they need a receiver. I think they could go out and get a Brandon Cooks. I'd be happy. Bring him back. You know, get somebody that can help Mac Jones. If that's your plan, okay, I'm cool with that. But you have cap space right now. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to use it for J.C. Jackson right now? Give it to him? Sure. I'll be happy with that as well. But do something because I feel like this team, you know, they're 1-3 right now. Obviously, they probably not going to win the Super Bowl, but I think that they were still going to be competitive, especially with Gilmore in the lineup. So now it just feels like, as a fan who's used to winning, feels like almost a little bit like you're giving up on the year, which I'm frustrated with. Now, I know that's not the case, but it does feel like that from the perspective of a fan. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Patriots adjust, how they move forward, how they use this money, and how they live without Gilmore. Obviously, they've been a good defense without him this year. I expect Jamie Collins to provide an impact at the second level, and I will be covering that move on my Patreon exclusively, so make sure you check that out. Link is in the description. You'll get it at the $3 tier, so make sure you check that out. As well as for other NFL fans, Jalen Smith, I'll be covering that. He's likely going to be signing with the Packers, so I'll be covering that as well on Patreon only exclusively. So link is in the description. Check that out, guys. But that's all I got to say about the Gilmore trade, the Gilmore move. I love the player. I think he's going to help Carolina immensely, not just on the field, but off the field as a coach, as a person, as a leader, as a champion. And I think it's extremely frustrating from a Patriots fan perspective. especially as a team that's reliant on defense to win. And I just hope that they can figure this out moving forward, because it is time that we start to question Bill Belichick and what he's doing with this team, because he's made a lot of bad moves lately. And I think it's just continuing to pile up. So we'll see what happens. But that's all I got to say about that. Make sure that you do. Gronk, spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's Mitch from the BLV. Peace.